Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Nevada Unified School District Board of Trustee meeting. This is a special session tonight, and I'd like to ask you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance before we begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with our agenda tonight. And the first item is item 4, which is approval of agenda. So I'm going to ask the Board of Trustees if I can have a motion to approve tonight's agenda, or if there's any items they would like to discuss.
I'd like to approve the order of business for tonight's meeting. There are the agenda.
Okay, I have a first to approve tonight's agenda.
I second.
Seconded by Trustee Aguila. So all those in favor of tonight's agenda, 7-4-0 against. So we will proceed with the agenda as published. Next is number 5, which is public comment, our consent agenda. And to this moment, I have no public comment on tonight's public comment on our consent agenda tonight. So I'm going to go and ask the board if they have any comments, or if I could have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda. Actually, what I want to do is I want to ask the board to know that we are amending item 9B, which is the tentative agreement with our classified. Some of the pages were omitted in the published report, and so you now have the missing pages on this cherry bond here.
So I'll move approval of the consent agenda, including the amendments at our desk, which represents the full text of the agreement.
Thank you. So I have a motion to accept tonight's consent agenda as amended. Do I have a second? Seconded by Trustee Mack. So all those in favor of approval of tonight's consent agenda, 7-4-0 against. So the consent agenda is approved as amended. Thank you, Superintendent Derby, for reminding me about that amendment. All right, our first item is a staff report, item 7A, which is a report on the state's budget, known as the May revision, and our Chief Financial Officer, Lois Standing, will present.
Hello. I think it's great that you're all here for this meeting, because now you get a little lesson in school budgets. We'll try and make it quick. So in January, the governor comes out with his first proposal for a budget. And then there's a lot of time when people are talking about it. And then in May, he or she does what is called a May revise. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. That came out earlier this month. And on Friday, I attended the school services workshop that explains the details of the May revise. So I want to share some of that with you tonight. Everything that everyone's seeing in the news is, oh my gosh, there is a lot of money for schools. And that's true, but there's always, and it just depends on exactly how much we get. So we'll talk about that with certain details. But what was interesting in the school services workshop, that throughout the 3-hour workshop, there was continual reference to the coming recession. That we say that all the time, but we've had a really long time without a recession. And with the inflation that is present right now, it's seeming more and more that it is perhaps in our future at some point. So that's always to think about. So the risks are continuing to happen in our economy. So we just need to be aware that for this year, it's looking really good, but it will come back someday, the days where they deficit our money instead of giving us more and more. So there's increased revenue over this. The state just has more money than literally it knows what to do with. Revenue for 2021, 21-22, and 22-23 is all coming in over past projections. And the way it stands right now, without getting into the details of Prop 98, schools are due a set percentage of the state budget. So as the state budget grows, so grows funding for schools. So some of the proposed items are a statutory COLA at 6.56%, which is fairly high, looking in past history. They're talking about an increase to base funding outside of the COLA. So that would be the local control funding formula. The base amount for every student they're talking about increasing. And so then the COLA gets added to that. There will be an add-on for transitional kindergarten. That's a new program. It's going to mean more students coming into the school system. So there needs to be additional funding put into the state budget for those children. Along with that, there will be added penalties if you don't comply with the rules for transitional kindergarten. And I say will, everything I'm talking about is proposed. It's not yet clear what the Assembly, what the Senate, and what the governor, as they figure this all out, will end up with. But the kinds of things for transitional kindergarten we have to be careful of is class size, no more than 24. The ratio, we have to have 2 to 1, 2 adults in the classroom with the 24 children. And the teacher of those 2 people needs to have the proper certification. Although we have a little bit of a grace period this coming year, it will become more strict the following year. There are multiple proposals. There's some different ones in the Assembly to soften the ADA cliff. And now they're kind of looking at a double approach where one will be the average over 3 years so that we'll have a low ADA because of we had hold harmless with COVID. We got to use a higher number. We're in declining enrollment. We were in declining enrollment, I should say, because this next year looks pretty flat, if not a little higher than last year. But it's still a lot lower than what we've been funded on for the last couple of years because of hold harmless. So they're allowing us to do an average over 3 years, which will include 2 of those higher amounts. So that's a good thing. And then another proposed piece is to, because it's not just your total, it has to do with attendance yield. In the past, we had a very good attendance yield or attendance rate in Novato, 97%, which means out of 100 days going to school, our kids went to school 97 of those 100 days. That's very good. During COVID, that has gone down to 94, in some cases 95. So that directly affects our funding. And they're talking about giving us a little bit of a hold harmless on that piece. So all in all, we should be seeing something that will help us. Although in budget development, we won't put that as an assumption because it's not set in stone yet. So we'll be more conservative at budget development, and you'll see improvement either at 45-day revise or first interim. Luckily, there are no new programs, nothing we have to write a plan about. We've had enough of those over the last year, but they are talking about a very substantial increase to the Extended Learning Opportunity Program. It's going to be up to $3 million a year for Novato, which is quite a bit of money. And that, if you recall, is the program where we're supposed to create a 9-hour day at the elementary level for our unduplicated students. All right. There is a large one-time, just what we want. As they say, this is right out of Jerry Brown's playbook, one-time unrestricted revenue. They had so much money, they heard no new programs, so they're just giving us. And if what they say is correct, $1,500 per ADA, that's $10 million for Novato, with absolutely no restrictions on how we spend it. So that will be something that we should plan for very carefully. Not clear yet what a deadline for that would be. Okay. So I think pretty much the only other thing I want to tell you is there's a few other programs outside of the base funding. They're talking about funding school facilities so that any project that is on the list waiting to be funded for one of those elections, at this point, everything would be funded. So that's several $1 million for Novato that would come back into our bond fund. So that's a good thing. They're talking about one-time deferred maintenance fund with the intent of that to help districts that may not be able to support bonds. So it's, the higher your unduplicated count, the more money you would get in that program, but a minimum of $100,000. Not sure where Novato lands in that, but at least we'll get $100,000 to put towards a project. And the only other thing is it doesn't look like independent study is being mandated, as it was last year. That's not definite, but at this point, there's nothing in the proposals that would continue that restriction. So that's all I had prepared to say. Are there any questions or comments?
Trustee Gasson, and then Trustee Butler and Trustee Mack have questions.
Actually, I was just going to add on. Thank you for the summary. I actually participated in the Capital Advisors session they had this morning, and one of the things that they were saying is that there's just been too much one-time money, and that's, so, we've got all this. But the thing that was interesting about the $1,500 for the ADA was they were advising, because of the potential cliff coming forward, is to try to hold as much of it as possible, but then we get into that whole reserve thing. So I'd be interested as we develop plans that, it's great to have all this, but that now we're restricted by these reserve requirements.
Right, the 10% cap.
Yeah, so so that was of concern or to note. And then the one other thing he mentioned was about special education funding. They weren't really clear. I guess there's some calculation. I mean, we'll be getting an additional funding, but he said there was some adjustment that was also being made, which I thought was a positive movement forward.
I think overall it is positive. It's extremely confusing.
Yeah, he said they just, he was explaining, he goes, you know what, we're just going to wait, but we've at least got a good, I think it was like 800 and something.
It should take everyone up to an $820 per ADA. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I believe that's right. But anyway, so I think that's also really great news.
Every little bit helps.
Trustee Butler.
I as well did the Capital Advisors up at Sonoma County Office of Education. Were you there at the Sonoma County Office of Ed? No, I did the Zoom one. Oh, yeah, okay. And pretty much everything you've stated is what I heard with the Capital Advisors, and I sent the PowerPoint to Jan
Yes,
and you as
thank
well,
you.
so maybe the whole board can get that in our weekly, so. The CalSTRS and CalPERS, there's nothing. There's no new funding. I think it's important to keep reiterating that.
They are increasing.
Well, yeah, the rate.
No, there's no subsidy.
Not good for us.
No, and I think what I've been told, I can't analyze the governor, but that he decided most likely it was politically dangerous to say he was supporting teachers' retirement, so we got the one-time money instead.
Right.
With no restrictions.
Right, that's what they want us to use that for, which
Yeah.
is not, I'm not in agreement. Okay.
Okay, Trustee Mack.
And forgive me for getting a little rhetorical, but the $10 million number is big, and that's going to stick in a lot of people's head who might be listening to this. So I just want to counterbalance that with the question, am I correct to say that we can't spend that on salaries? It's really only on one time.
It is not a good idea to use one-time money to pay for salaries. I'll offset that by saying that is exactly what we did to give our teachers raises this year, but it's done very carefully, and it's never, we can't continue the raise without bolstering our bottom line or our finances in general. So it could be used in part to help it keep going, but it's never an ongoing answer.
And I'm just kind of getting creative here, but remind me, how many more years of increases in PERS and STIRS do we have? We're getting close to the end of it, right? A couple, 3 years?
For now, about 2 or 3, I believe.
Right.
But you never know what the future holds. I mean,
So potentially we could, and then we can move on and not have to talk about that anymore, at least for the next 3 or 4 years.
that would be one way to use it. Yes.
Okay.
There's several ways I would think to use $10 million.
Yeah.
Any other questions? This is for information only, but I think when the rider bills are completed and the actual facts and figures are known, we will develop some agenda planning and come up with some ways to talk about how we're going to spend the additional funds and what our priorities are. So that's what's going to come from this information only at this point. All right, so if there's nothing else, then appreciate that report today. Thank you very much.
I think I'm next. And I think I have to get another paper.
Okay, so while staff is getting ready, our next agenda item is 7B. This is Measure G bond update on air conditioning installation project and equipment shortages at Lou Sutton Elementary School, Rancho Elementary School, and Novato High School. And we have our Chief Financial Officer, Lois Standing, and our construction consultant, Greystone West, here to present on the issue.
Our favorite topic. So I'm going to let Damien take over. He knows all the details, but the point I want to make is that there needs to be some direction tonight, that whichever way you go with what, after you get the information from Damien, there needs to be board action one way or the other. So we'll get back to that after he fills you in on what we've learned in the last week.
So I just want to make sure I understood what you said is that we're going to have information tonight, but do you need action tonight, or do you need a direction?
Yes.
Sort of a.
We will create an action item from the direction that you give us tonight.
All right. Thanks for that clarification. So nice to see you.
Good evening. On the morning of the 18th, we received word from Carrier Equipment Corporation that our original estimated arrival date of equipment of June 10th no longer held, and that they would be delivering the balance of the equipment on early September is the indication that they gave us. In the interim days, we've done our best to claw that back and try and push back as hard as we possibly can. They're indicating that it's driven by a chip shortage. And as much as that feels like a cop-out, it actually legitimately, within the scope of their manufacturing, would show up late. It's something that they install the boards at the very end of manufacturing the equipment, and unfortunately, it sounds like they're very close to having that done, but the chip shortage is holding them up. At this point, we're still doing our best to improve that date. The best commitment that we have right now is July 29th. We've heard the 19th. Both of those dates would be very close to doable. This impacts fan coil units in particular, which thankfully are things that do come towards the end of an air conditioning project. The concern there is that for 7 of the fan coil units, we may not have them in time, depending on whether that date holds or not. That's kind of the latest that we have, and we're doing our best to continue to improve those dates, but unfortunately it's a market-driven factor right now that we don't have the control over with Carrier. We are seeing other manufacturers still hit their dates, but it's too late to change the basis of the design at this phase.
And can you talk a little bit about the bidding?
Sure. The other update following our last meeting is that the general contractor did go out for additional bids. We received a couple of additional subcontractors interested in the projects, unfortunately in the very similar ballpark to the first set that we did receive. It moved the needle a little bit, but not drastically. Rancho is the closest of the 3 within 9% of the overall budget on the project. The other 2, Novato High School and Lou Sutton, are both pretty blown out at this phase. So the intent was originally to try and repackage, to go out at a different way to get additional coverage. We've chased every subcontractor that we can within the local market. We've gone out to everyone that we've worked with in the last 10 plus years, or anyone locally that could handle these size of projects. And unfortunately, it's a combination of either too much work, disinterest in general, or high numbers. So I wish I had better news. That's kind of the position that we're in currently. I think it gives us a few options moving forward of potentially repackaging, potentially deferring the equipment, depending on whether that shows up or not, would have to be stored in the interim period, whether that shows up in September for next year, or however we might evaluate those options.
I'm sure there'll be more questions for you. So I know that's a lot. What I have come to understand from talking with Mike and Melissa and the team at Gray West is that we can assume maybe that those dates are okay. And what it would mean is we can get 2/3 of the air conditioners in at Rancho, with potentially 7 of them not being operational at the start of school. Which 7? That's a whole nother decision. But there's also, is there not the chance that these dates will then get pushed out even further? So it's, I think staff's feeling is it's probably not worth putting that pressure and having people's expectations and just trying to believe these dates are going to be what they will be, because in this day and age, things are changing all the time, and just stopping the whole thing. And then perhaps one of our thoughts is to go out early in the year, November, December, January, with 3 separate bids, not combining them, hoping that smaller vendors will then be more likely to be able to handle the job, and we'll get some real competition. Is that what we've discussed pretty much? Okay.
Okay. Questions, going to go Diane, Mac, Milrick.
So, I'm sorry, I think I'm completely confused. So
It is
let's work
confusing.
With Rancho. So I understand there's an issue with the chips, but it sounds like some of this happens like at the last minute. So is there the opportunity to do all the work and then have the units be put in, and then when we get the chips, like, finish that, or is that too simplistic of a?
I think I'm going to let.
Sure. So in this particular case, I think the best plan for that, if we should decide to move forward with that particular path, is fan coils are basically the units that go within the classroom closets themselves. They're the last item that are typically installed in the process. You could leave the existing furnaces in place within those 7 classrooms to maintain airflow. In other words, you'd be no worse off than you currently are by leaving that equipment in place. You rough in everything, all of the connections, with the anticipation that when those units show up, you've minimized the work down to just that very last leg to tie it all in, fire it up, and then you're ready. So potentially that is a mitigation strategy that we could pursue here. The concern is whether or not that July 19th, July 29th, that range, if that holds, it is still doable. If that slips, it would be a situation where we would then have to come in after hours or some other mechanism to be able to remove those last units in the 7 classrooms that are affected, to then swap in the equipment once it does arrive.
Okay, so I actually do have it pretty well understood then. Okay, that helps a lot. All right, I'll let other questions then, because I have it. So then, to me, there's like this second piece with the other thing. I mean, to me, I'm looking at this as 2 things. There's whether we do the work at Rancho, because we have most of that there, and then there's what's going on with the other sites and the equipment for that. Correct?
Yeah, I think you have
That's
it.
correct. Yeah, essentially between 3 sites, we
Okay.
are scavenging enough of it so that the sites use common equipment between the 3. The fan coils are the same for all of the classrooms across Novato High School, Lou Sutton, and Rancho, which is to our benefit in this situation. Between the 3 equipment orders, we're able to scavenge enough, minus 7 units, to do Rancho.
Okay.
So it's that
So-
tight right now based on the chip delivery.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question, but for Rancho, I think I thank you for clarifying that, so thank.
All right. Trustee Mack.
Yeah, thank you. That does help, and thank you for asking that question, because I was going along the same lines. But to take this further, so if we were to pursue the process of starting the project and really roughing in everything, but leaving the legacy units in there, and then, like you said, Rancho, if July 19th or 29th works out, would be 7 short. But the other schools would be all sitting ready, but they would be no worse than they were before, but running the old units.
Exactly. The equipment for the other schools would not be arriving until September at this point. That's where we're
Got it.
at.
But if we did the project this summer where we roughed everything in, and
But-
can we do that?
No, the contract that we have going is only for Rancho. We don't
Okay.
have, that's the whole point with the other extreme
Okay.
costs. So he's only talking Rancho when he's talking roughing things out.
Okay. Then get me up to speed again on why the contract for,
It was 89%,
Sure. So it was driven entirely by subcontractor coverage. In
Right.
this particular case, one subcontractor, a mom and pop shop, so to speak, the few that's left in existence, based in Cotati, provided a bid for Rancho Elementary School.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's where they top out. They are not capable of taking on
Okay.
any more work than
Now I
that.
remember. And the other contracts were for all three.
Correct.
And now we're down to two.
Exactly.
Okay.
Trustee Milrick.
Here we find ourselves in sort of an interesting dilemma. So let me be clear, the contract for the equipment is for all three sites, but the labor component for each site is different, is that true?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so your idea is we can bring in the equipment and sit it on the shelf, we get it, we bring it in as, so is your idea we should go ahead with the equipment acquisition contracts, keep those and take some warehouse space, and if we do it in September or August or whenever,
Yep.
get the machinery now because we can get the machinery now. Is that a
Exactly.
correct
So
statement?
we've already placed the order for the equipment as of early March. I think it was March 1st that the order
Okay,
went.
so we're on the hook to receive for all three sites.
We were trying to stay ahead of this very concern, and unfortunately, the chip shortage is still something.
Yeah, I know,
that's-
and I heard on the news today, they figure we're halfway through the chip shortage. I mean, Ford can't ship pickups because they can't get microprocessors. So this isn't a unique thing. It's any piece of machinery requires electronics and, so we're gonna get everything by September. You think we could have gotten enough for some of Rancho by July?
Well,
I'm
so-
confused about if the equipment order is all one big piece, how are we taking care of one school and not the other two? That just makes my head, I scratch my head.
So the other piece of it is driven by the labor portion. So the coverage for subcontractors on Novato High School and Lou Sutton was both so substantially over budget. We were roughly 85% over budget.
And you're just not gonna sign a contract
Correct. It's so
at a
blown out.
gunpoint, basically.
We're not going to sign it.
Well, yeah, at gunpoint, basically, yeah. Okay, so, so all the Lou Sutton and Novato High School, we don't even have a labor contract yet, so there's no way they're gonna get done before September, one way or another. Even if you went out today and put them out to bid,
Yep.
the earliest would be September. So can you do, so in this school district, these are heat pump machines, is that a correct statement?
It's a
Combination
yeah,
furnace and air conditioning unit together?
Exactly. It's a fan coil, so basically it's like a reversible heat pump. It functions.
Right,
yeah.
so so while we may not need them, if we can't get them in time for August, summertime weather, we're gonna need them in time for wintertime heating considerations.
I think the concern at that point shifts to having to do the work while students are in session.
That's where I'm going, is all of a sudden you got students sitting in a class and they all get out at 3 o'clock and the crew comes in all night long and then tries to clean up and
It's
it
impossible.
gets expensive, at least, and maybe even you're compromising some of the safety parameters you would have set.
Exactly. I think we're right back in the same budget position that we would be to go ahead and award. The concern right now is twofold. It's the labor component for Novato High School and Lou Sutton
Yeah.
being blown out. It's also the equipment itself. Between the three sites worth of equipment, we're able to scavenge in total only one site worth at best, to kind of pull together from, if we pulled all the units from Novato, all the units from Lou Sutton, and combine that towards Rancho, which is the closest for budget purposes, it would still potentially be 7 short with this July 19th, July 29th.
So
So
here's.
Superintendent
here's-
Derby's got
can
a
I-
question
can
when
I-
you're,
can I
when you're
finish?
done. Well, actually, I want to point out that Superintendent Derby has a question if you're
Okay.
done.
Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, okay. So my concern is, in this community, we have periodically named schools that we're considering foreclosure or some other way. And one of these schools keeps getting named, and that's the one that's not going to get air conditioning. And it's uncomfortable to me for us one more time to sit here and say, well, we have a solution, but it's only for some kids and it's only for this school. And that is very, very uncomfortable place for me to be. So I would like to understand better why the circumstances lead us to where that's a good idea, as opposed to just say 3 schools we missed, set it aside, we'll finish this next summer. So That's,
So let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
so, okay.
Let's have Super Derby weigh in, and then we'll continue
It's a
that.
good lead-in for me, Ross, because
you.
we got a good bid for Rancho. That's why we're going forward with Rancho. It's no other reason than we got a good bid and the other two were not. So will we continue to do separate bids so that the mom and pop shop in Cotati could pick up another job for us if we separately bid them?
So I think potentially if it was deferred to next year, that is certainly a potential option, is to split out Novato High School and Lou Sutton into independent projects and pursue those with the idea that potentially you increase your competition to smaller contractors. The concern with this particular subcontractor is they just do not have the capability to take on any more than they already are.
That's
assuming that
too bad.
They're the rare combination of good, fast, and cheap in most cases. Unfortunately, it's just, that is their capacity limit.
Yeah, so there was no preference for Rancho in anything except for it met the bids, and the others went over so far that it was impossible for us to put that additional money because it was gouging.
Exactly.
Really.
And literally, it's the smallest of the three sites is why they bid that one.
Okay.
Lou Sutton was very close in scale. They could have jumped one more unit and gone over there, but it wasn't anything that anybody gave a preference on. They just, that was what they bid.
And that was the only bid that only went after one school site, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Damien.
I have a clarifying question. If we were to attempt a partial install, what does that do to the existing bid? Doesn't that give the contractor they can't, there's an economy of scale, so if they're going to do it partially and then come back and finish off the last 7, are you saying they would do it for the original bid amount, or does that open another cost?
So in this case, the delivery mechanism for the project was originally with all 3 going as one project through the lease-leaseback delivery method with a general contractor. We have discussed the implications if indeed we were to split the project and just pursue Rancho, because that is the only one that's within the realm of budget. And in total, the implications take us to within 9% of our estimate. So,
But specifically, the Rancho proposal is still a partial. It's to do all but 7 units and then wait. And I'm just saying, to the contractor would honor the original
so this
bid on that
includes,
situation, or would they want more money to come back and do a secondary install?
it does include installation of those 7 units. They bid the entire package. Potentially, if the units did run so substantially late that we were into a situation with overtime, you might be on the hook for some additional overtime labor, but it would be minimal.
So I think what we want to do is just make sure we're getting our questions answered specifically. We got a lot on the agenda tonight, and what we want to get to some direction at this point. So I'm just going to ask to make sure we understand the situation, and we should start talking about what we're going to do. So Trustee Mack.
So just one last question. You answered my first question about the contractor was the one who selected Rancho, basically. So got that. The next question is with the other 2 schools, with the bids coming in 80. Well, really, it was for all 3, right? They came in 85% too high. Is it feasible at all to revisit those quotes with 1, just the 2 schools, but 2, just for the labor? And, just to do all the rough work and then install the rest of it later. And does that get us within, in other words, what drove their costs? Was it the equipment or the labor or both?
So it was purely on the labor side of it. The equipment itself, we are already under contract for, and that was entirely within budget. We placed that order back in March to be able to try and be ahead of this.
Okay. Trustee Jacobson.
Quick question, just for my peace of mind, when you went out for more bids since the last time you were here a couple weeks ago, was that for the 2 sites in total or individual?
It was actually for all 3. So they went back out for all 3 sites. Any contractor had the ability to bid any one individually, all 3 together, 2 of the 3, any combination thereof.
Would it
So Lois, do you want to try to narrow this down to
Well,
an
I think-
either-or situation?
I
or
think
how do you-
that's what I will read from what Melissa gave me as my cheat sheet of what the 2 action items could be. It's either or. And I think that'll help clarify where your discussion should go and what your decision should be. So the first one, if the board gives direction to proceed with the Rancho TBR.
Total base rate.
Oh, that's technical. The Rancho project for summer 2022 with potential of completion delays into the fall dependent on equipment arrival, we will need to come back within a week as soon as is possible at a special board meeting with a resolution to approve the Rancho total base rent and downscope dissolution of the original lease-leaseback contract for Lou Sutton and Novato. And that could be a consent item if you want. So that's the first action item. The other would be if the board gives direction to delay all 3 projects until summer 2023, we will need to come back within a week or as soon as is possible at a special board meeting with a resolution to dissolve the entire lease-leaseback. So it's one of those 2 things that's going to happen.
So I'm going to take off the table that we won't be able to meet. I'm going to say that this board will put together a quorum as needed. So let's just take that off the table. That we will make a decision in time for either way we decide to go. So then, do you guys have any of you want to venture to say what you think we should do at this point?
I will. I would move all 3 projects to next year. Let's do this, start all over. This is fair for everybody. Let's revisit this again. We just don't know, these July dates are back and forth. Let's just take that and move it all to next year. I know it's not what anybody really wants. We wanted to get these 3 schools closed up and done, but we're $2 million over what our original budget was. So we need to revisit this at all 3 at the same time.
Okay, Trustee Gasson.
I'm actually completely opposite. I'm trying to find the reason not to. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any harm in getting the Rancho completed. There's no downside that I'm catching. It would be a little bit late, but the structure would be there. There might be a little bit over, additional time involved. But what am I missing? Is there any significant? I mean, if they don't come until December, is that going to really mess? The extra chips.
Well, I guess one question, would the heating part of the unit work? So, I mean, you could potentially have some classrooms with air conditioning and others without, but then you have some schools with it and some without, so that's not all that different.
I mean, especially if this company is available now. I mean, God only knows what's going to happen next. I mean, I'm disappointed that we can't do more, but I feel like if 90% of this can be completed, that's kind of where I would prefer.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on this one? Okay, Trustee Jacobson.
I unfortunately don't have a outcome to this statement of either of these 2 directions, but I would be remiss to not state that it's very hard for Lou Sutton to continuously be put on the chopping block in this manner, and this is just insult to injury. So while I don't want that to begrudge another set of students and teachers something great like air conditioning that will improve their quality of education, it's really hard to watch this keep happening. And I don't know what that means for their student population. I mean, I know there's people that want to leave that school because they feel like, well, it's going to get closed anyway. I mean, we can see that by the fact that they won't even do the air conditioning, which obviously is just a thought process and not concrete, but I can't not say it. So there you
go. Trustee Gila, Trustee Milrick, you guys have thoughts?
I'm just worried about the unknown for the future. I don't know what will happen, the economy. One thing, this is, here we are again, and we had this conversation a long time ago, and we were moving forward, so we thought, and then economy or whatever, things happen, so I'm in favor of getting done what we can get done as soon as we can, and prioritize.
My comment earlier was, I think that in terms of our political circumstances, Trustee Jacobs' comments, I think, are relevant. I think it looks like we got our fingers on the scale. In this case, based on the evidence that we received this evening, I think that's not the case. I think the material was ordered in March, which was about the time that this board reprioritized. I don't have the exact date. We had a meeting to reprioritize the air conditioning forward, and then they had to do engineering. And as far as I can tell, they haven't delayed in that process. They've been moving forward expeditiously. And this equipment shortage is a real thing. I would, if we have somebody under contract to get this work done, I would get the work done. And I would have a long conversation about what are you going to do if it runs into the school year and some of this stuff gets delayed further. Based on what I heard in today's news, is the chip shortage continues, but is getting better. And if they have projected dates that put it in the timeline where we can do the work, I would proceed on doing the Rancho work, and that leaves 2 schools, Novato High and Lou Sutton, undone. So then, in addition to that, I would do something to demonstrate to Lou Sutton that the reality that Trustee Jacobson pointed out is not the case, that this board, this administration has not made a decision about where we're going to do. And we know enrollment's growing. Dr. Derby and I had a conversation earlier, it was yesterday. But we got a chance to get this work done, and I don't see why, for all those political reasons, we don't take advantage of our engineering opportunity. And I'm an engineer by training, and if I can successfully get it done, I have to deal with the political reality that this sets up. It's real. We have to think about it. We have to do something. But I don't think walking away from a contract, a bid that we know is a good bid, is a good idea. So I would, as much work as is going to apply, I think we ought to proceed with this contract. That's my view. And it's clearly there's 2 sides to this conversation, and they're driven by 2 different considerations. So there's my 2 cents.
All right, so are you, you're going to weigh in as well?
Yeah, but I'll be quick. And I intentionally waited to hear because I definitely had some consideration to consider. But it seems to me it makes the most sense to stick with the contract we have right now, go into next year with 2 schools, and then we have that vendor again to potentially bid on that. And I would also further suggest, because I totally empathize with what is the situation with Lou Sutton, let's ensure that that contractor looks at Lou Sutton first, because that's probably well within his or her scope. And it also just gets us some surety that we're going to tackle that project next year, because we're going to have and if we can get that bid now and get it locked in for summer of, what would it be, 23, let's do it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, I think I'm hearing most of the board would like to do as much as they can as soon as possible based on what they have in place. We have some equity, fairness issues around the timing we'll have to explain. There's been an earlier conversation about a lot of one-time funds there, so there's probably things we might be able to do to mitigate the circumstances with the heat at the sites that aren't going to be done. This is not the position that I would take, but I'm sort of on the fence about this. I think the sound thing to do would be not to do any of them. Certainty is lacking in every decision we've been making since this pandemic started and has ebbed. And I'm not comfortable with breaking ground and starting construction on something without more absolute guarantees about when and what we're going to get in time and the disruption around the site, et cetera. So setting aside the political and who's being treated fairly and that type of thing, those are all perceptions, misperceptions, I should add. But at the same time, it's kind of like I get your point. So I think what we got here is direction to the board to see how comfortable, to the staff, is how comfortable can you guys come back with a plan to start Rancho with what we got, and let us know what you guys think of that. So you'd either come back and say, yeah, we're going to do it. This is what could go wrong, or we really think this is a bad idea. Don't do it. But I think that's kind of where the board is right now.
Damien can speak to that right now, because that's all we've been talking about. Right?
So if you're ready to do that now, then unless you're going to say something different that you hadn't already said, then I think the consensus here is that you should do what you can with Rancho while you can, and we'll attack. Would it be fair for us to say as a board we would direct Lou Sutton to be the next priority? I think that our secondary students could probably hold out.
I would like to get us under contract for the other two schools as soon as possible, even if the work is scheduled in the future. I would like
I
those
think that-
contracts to go early.
I think
That's my view.
That's the plan. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's the direction we're giving to staff right now. Any last minute comments at all? This is not an action item, so it's going to come back. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Moving right along here. We now are going to move to item 8, which is our discussion action items. And letter A is to review and approve board policy and administrative regulation updates in the 6,000 instruction series, specific to 6154 homework makeup work. This is a second reading of the policy we went over at our last meeting, and our director of education, probably, I don't know if I'm giving you promotion or a demotion at this point, but the person who knows the most about this, Director Larson.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here. So we're here for a second reading on the homework makeup policy 6154. At the last meeting, there was one recommendation, and that recommendation was specific to board policy, and that was a revision from teacher shall update electronic grade books weekly in order to clearly communicate student progress to teacher shall update electronic grade books regularly in order to communicate student progress. And so that is the only change that is made since our last meeting. And so I am asking you for your approval of this board update and administrative regulation or recommendations for further action.
Okay, board, we've got our slightly revised homework policy. Do we have any comments, questions, or a motion? We have a motion. Okay, Trustee
I'll second.
Gasson, what is your motion?
To approve the administrative regulation updates in the 6,000 series to 6154 homework makeup work second reading.
Okay, we can have some discussion if I can get a second. And I
second.
believe Trustee Mack has seconded that motion, so I'm going to go back to the board and see if there's any comments or statements to be made. Seeing none, I'm prepared to support the motion. So all those in favor? 7-4, 0 against. So we will adopt the new policy.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to B, which is to review and approve board policy administrative regulation. We've got some exhibits here. This has to do with the 5,000 series. And it's a second reading, and the board policy is dress and grooming. So this should be interesting.
Yeah. So
What's our dress code, guys?
our dress code policy, long overdue revision. We're excited to bring it back for a second reading. After the May 10th meeting, again, 2 recommendations were made for this one. On the board policy, we added the reference to board policy 5144 discipline after the 7th paragraph to mirror what we had in our previous board policy. The wording remained the same, but we did want to reference the board policy around discipline to reflect on. And then the second is to add an exhibit. It originally came to you with no exhibit, and there was a recommendation to add an exhibit so that we could ensure that the dress code that was posted as outlined in AR would be the same at every school site. And so you see an exhibit has been added for tonight's approval. And so with that, again, I am asking for approval of the updated dress and grooming board policy, administrative regulation, and exhibit 5132.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion from Trustee Aguila. That motion is, Trustee? To affirm the recommendation of staff to accept the second reading of this policy and its exhibits and regulations. Okay, so seconded by? Seconded by Trustee Mack, Mr. Miller. So this is good. We are modernizing our dress code policy to be closer to the world and times we live in. I think you guys will appreciate it. Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in, question. We have a first, a second,
Just
appropriate.
want to say thank you for doing that extra little work on it.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor? 7 for, 0 against, so we will adopt this new dress code policy.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next is item C. This is a adoption of resolution number 30 for the year 2021 through 2022 to recognize the LGBTQ plus Pride Month by flying the progress flag in the month of June. And I'm going to have Superintendent Derby present the resolution and then bring it back to the board. I do want to point out that I have over 19 requests on public comment. So just to give the public a chance to think about it, we limit the total number of minutes for public comment to 21, 22, maybe 23, 24, if the board would accept a few more. So I was going to suggest that if you feel like your name is on this list of speakers and you know you're going to say the exact same person before or after you, maybe we should open it up to let someone has maybe another point or something they want to stress so that they get a chance to speak if they're farther down than number 9 and 10 on this list. So just throwing that out there for our public today. So Superintendent Derby.
Okay, thank you. So in the fall, you adopted Pride Month for June. And at that point in time, we didn't do anything further than that. And what's coming back to you now is an adoption of the board policy and a resolution to fly the progress flag for the month of June. The county is doing it, the state is doing it, Marin County Office of Education is doing it, the County of Marin, the City Council, the Police Department, and this request is coming to you for us to join them. Additionally, on June 1st, the City of Novato is doing a celebration and will be doing an activity to raise the pride flag for the City of Novato. So what we're recommending to you today, and you have all the backup, if you look at the supporting documents, we'd be glad to answer any questions around that. But we think this is a community effort, and we would like to have us be part of it. So I think there are probably several comments. I wasn't going to review the resolution. It's pretty straightforward, but glad to answer any questions.
Okay, so do we have any questions about the resolution from staff?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Trustee Aguila.
Just the resolution that we adopted back in March, in the fall, that included a lot of groups, a lot of the population that need representation, correct?
Absolutely.
Including the LGBTQ.
Yes.
Yeah. And was that a 7-0? I think that was, we all voted, that was 7-0.
I don't recall, but my guess it was that it was
Yes.
7-0.
Okay. I wanted to, two questions about, like, first of all, our logo. Does our logo include all groups
I wasn't
in here?
when you did
You
it.
weren't
I'm gonna
here
assume
during
it
the
did.
time. And I'm asking yeah, it could be funny, but, just wanted to know if, it's just a question about, I believe when we did this, we included all groups, right? And I just want to make sure that all groups are included.
Yeah, Trustee Aguila, yes,
that-
when
okay.
we went through the process of
I was-
approving the logo, we wanted to be as inclusive as possible.
Right, I think I remember that. And there's a sign outside in our building that says "We welcome all," right?
Absolutely.
And I believe we have one in almost, if not all, of our school buildings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, so with that, that answers some of my questions about what we have. But I'll let whoever else wants to speak. I just wanted to get that background information, make sure that it was my questions were answered. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions about the resolution from staff and why it's being brought forward? Seeing none, I then would think that the board would like to hear from the public speakers. So why don't I take a look at yes, sure.
Tell us how many cards you've got and how do you think it's what percentage of these?
Originally I had
Speakers we're gonna hear
19, but it's grown to 23, so there is a lot of interest in this. Our policy is that we take them on a first come, first served basis. I'm okay with sort of reading through some names. If you want to, I mean, what, you just wanted to know how many or how it came about?
I mean, your comment about if everybody takes 3 minutes, that gets you down to like eight or so people. So, I mean, your encouragement to allow a broader, you're running the meeting, so
It's actually up to
I'll
us.
put
and
on
I-
you the same thing everybody put on me last year. Let you figure this out.
So what I alluded to earlier was this is something that we actually control as a board. So I'm okay with expanding the time frame, but I know that from a parliamentarian position that we have a fiduciary responsibility to get business done here on this agenda. So we cannot. It wouldn't be fair to the rest of the items to spend all night on a singular item, regardless of how it's from a priority perspective. So I'm basically trying to just stick to the rules, but. I would actually suggest to the board that if it's okay, we could stretch it from 7 to 9 and maybe get a couple more speakers in. And that's, again, first come, first serve. We can do that. Does the board want to start and see how we go? Trustee Gass and I prefer just sort of making a decision.
I'd like to stick with our 20-minute speaker allotment of time, personally.
Okay, so then it'll be 21. 7. And we have a 24th. All right. I wish the public had this level of interest in the operation and success of public education here in Novato every day. So I am glad to have everyone here. I just wish we could be as enthusiastic about arithmetic, reading, science. Okay. So here we go. We're going to start. So I'm going to let Grace Constantino. By the way, I'm awful at this. So Grace is going to be first. Then we're going to have Sky Brown, Gabe Schultz, and I'm kind of giving the names out a little bit in case some of you want to pass because you feel like you'd be redundant and maybe there's somebody farther down the line that would like to speak. So Ms. Constantino, you are up. 3 minutes.
Right. Hi, everyone. As we said, my name is Grace Cosentino. I'm a teacher in our wonderful school district, and I'm here to advocate for myself, my students, our students, and all of our staff in regards to the Pride and Progress flag. I am demigender. My pronouns are she, her, they, and I'm telling you right now that this flag, I feel welcome here. I feel welcomed here. It reminds me that I'm supported by my school, my district, and my community. It reminds me that all of us are supported. There are 7 school days in the month of January, 7 out of 180. We are asking for 7 days of representation, 7. We rightly celebrate Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage, Asian Heritage, Mental Health Awareness Month, and many more. Please help us be represented as well. Again, we're asking for 7 days. It's just 7 days. The LGBTQ plus community, especially our students of color, have high suicidal rates, high rates of drug addiction, high rates of bullying, and high rates of homelessness. If they do not feel a part of their community and have no representation. Representation matters. Today, our own Novato City, as was mentioned, has signed and followed a decree that the City of Novato expresses support for the rights, equality, and contributions of the LGBTQIA plus community and hereby proclaims the month of June 2022 as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer Plus Pride Month. They will also be flying that pride flag outside the City Hall with the American and California flags. Novato is NUSD. We must follow the guidance of our wonderful city and fly our flags as high and proud because we are proud. Thank you for doing the right thing tonight and voting yes on this adoption to the resolution. With my very short remaining time, I think it would be also good to understand that we have a lot more change that we need to do, such as making sure that we have accessible, gender-neutral bathrooms at all of the campuses, because we have a lot of students who do not use the restroom from 8 until 3. I just want you to imagine holding it yourself from 8 until 3. I know that I can't. We also need gender-neutral dressing rooms for PE. We need appointed safe spaces on campus. We need counselors, and we need staff training. Thank you so much for my time.
So we're going to keep moving on, so appreciate the enthusiasm, but the less of that, the more time we'll have to get through these. Also, by the way, there's no rule that says you have to take all 3 minutes. And again, my goal is to get more speakers, not to get people not to talk at all. I want to get more speakers. So next is Sky Brown, then we have Gabe Schultz, and then it'll be Kara Schultz, and after Kara will be Clark Schultz.
Can I adjust this?
You're welcome to take your mask off when you're speaking, so we can, or not, your choice.
Can I start? Hi, I'm Sky, he, they, and I go to San Jose Middle School. Schools want students to feel safe. Having pride flags on campus shows support. It shows the schools care about us and want us to feel safe. The flag shows that we are accepted and that we are safe there and that we are welcome to be ourselves. It might not seem like much to those outside the community, but it means a lot to us. Students going on campus for the first time are scared and don't know who they can trust or who will accept them. Seeing that flag will show them that they're welcome there and that they're safe. The progress flag represents not just LGBTQ+, but the progression in the world. The black and brown stripes represent people of color. The black stripe also represents AIDS and those who have been lost to it. The arrow represents forward movement and the progress that still needs to be done. I hope the flags can be allowed to show students that we're welcome and accepted. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, Gabe Schultz. Then it'll be Kara Schultz, Clark Schultz, Liam Monahan will be after.
My name is Gabriel Schultz. I'm an 8th grader at SJMS Middle School, and I'm bisexual. The progress flag means many things, including support and safety. That flag tells us that we are loved. Flags are meant to unite people, no matter who they are. That means everyone, including the LGBTQIA+ community. The amount of times that while at school I've heard comments from students that are transphobic and homophobic are too many. The amount of times I've heard students say that they don't feel safe at school is also too many. Taking away the ability to show that flag at our school only hampers the acceptance and inclusivity for all.
Kara Schultz. And after Liam, we're going to have Veronica Zappelli.
Hi, I'm Kara Schutz. I go to San Jose Middle School. For the 2.5 years that I was closeted, I felt scared, completely and utterly scared, completely and utterly alone. I was scared that someone would learn that I was queer, that I was trans. I didn't know anyone else around me who was also trans, and I felt very alone. But the progress flag and just general representation on school campuses help a lot with that fear. They make me feel safer. They make me feel like I'm not going to be attacked either physically or verbally because of my identity. They make me feel safe at school. They make me feel safe at a place that I should feel safe.
Clark Schultz. Then we'll have Liam, Veronica, and Alan Harris.
Hello, my name is Clark Schutz. I'm a student at Novato High. I am pansexual. I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community. Our flag unites us. Now, flags are not meant to unite everyone, only certain groups of people. The American flag It unites and represents every American, not every human on this earth. The Californian flag, it only unites Californians, not Americans. Our flag, our flags unite us, a group of people who are persecuted for the way that we were born. And more importantly, our flags help recognize that being queer is okay. Under this flag, we recognize that we are human too. Under this flag, we are stronger, better protected, and safer. To not put up this flag or to take down this flag would endanger every queer student, teacher, staff member, guest artist, and any parent at any of these schools. As our mere existence angers and upsets people who have no connection to our identity. As a cis white man, I have no connection to Black History Month or Women's History Month, the transgender flag, or the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. That does not mean I am allowed to look down upon these events and groups or claim that they are wrong. I am lucky enough not to have faced any problems due to my race or gender. I am smart enough to recognize my privilege, and I am kind enough to support these events, flags, and groups despite all of this, because that is what it comes down to, kindness. Whether we are recognized as humans, and whether other people, such as yourselves, have the decency to act upon it. We need to keep these flags up. We need them. They are our only bastion, our only safe haven in an unkind world. And to punish someone for not having it up, to punish someone for having it up or to not put it up would violate our rights. Please keep the flags up. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Liam, Monica. Thank you, Liam. Veronica Zeppeli, Alan Harris. I think this is Jake Wien, and then Addie Haruski. Sorry about the names, guys.
Am I close enough? Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, trustees. I just want to say I'm really proud of these kids for being here tonight. My name is Veronica Zeppeli, she, her. I am a Novato resident and parent to 3 Novato Unified School District students and an ally. Our family is vehemently in support of flying the progress flag at our Novato schools. Feeling safe in school should not be a political issue. Raising a progress flag tells the members of our community, including our students, that they are accepted and that they will not be hated or shamed for what they identify by as or who they love. In 2021, the Trevor Project, which is an LGBTQ+ youth suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization, found that 42% of nearly 35,000 LGBTQ+ youths who were surveyed seriously considered suicide within the last year. More than half of all transgender and non-binary youth who were surveyed seriously consider suicide. Anecdotally, one of my best friends, who did not come out to his family until he was in his early 20s in the 1990s, prayed every night before he went to sleep that he would die before he would have to tell his family that he was gay. Do you have any understanding of the pain, shame, and despair he felt in knowing who he was, but in living in a community that did not accept, celebrate, and support him? I ask you this. Who does the progress flag hurt? No one. But who does the flag support? Everyone. It lets our children know that they're in a safe place where they will be celebrated, loved, and accepted for exactly the unique and amazing individuals that they are. This is our responsibility as parents, educators, and community members. So I ask you to please vote yes to fly the progress flags at our Novato schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Alan Harris. Okay. Then we have Jake Wien. You're here? Okay, good. Followed by Addie Haruski. And now we have room for Amanda Montgomery.
Can I start? Hi, I'm Jack Wien. I'm an 8th grader at SJMS. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm an ally of the LGBTQ+ community. Currently, we fly 2 flags above our school, the Californian flag and the US flag. Those 2 flags represent almost everyone at our school. To add another will not take away from anyone. It will just add to the representation of people at our school and our town. Imagine you have a glass of water in a pitcher. To fill someone else's glass of water with the pitcher won't take any of the water from your glass. It will only add to someone else's. Supporting your students and making them feel safe is one of the most important goals for a school. That flag shows our safety and support. Please help us make the change in our society and make everyone feel welcome.
By all means, please state your correct name when you get up here in case I'm ruining it.
Hi, I'm Addie Hirosaki. I'm a freshman at San Marin High School and I use he, she pronouns. I'm here to speak on the policy of flying the Progress Pride flag for the month of June. Queer people have existed throughout history. This is undebatable. There's Sappho, an ancient Greek poet who is famous for being a woman attracted to women. A third gender called Mahu has existed in various Pacific islands for centuries. The Chevalier d'Eon lived as both a man and a woman at different times in their life, and they worked as a spy for Louis XV in the 18th century. The pride flag was created to show unity between all queer people, the colors representing a variety of identities. Other versions have been created over time to include brown and black stripes for people of color in the community, and pink and blue and white sections for transgender people in the community. Pride flags are a way to show unity, to show that we are united in the face of difficulty and that we are a community and a family. The pride flag was not created to exclude. Pride flags are meant for inclusion, not exclusion. It simply focuses on queer and genderqueer people because these issues are not about heterosexual cisgender people. They are about queer people, people who have felt other and endangered because of their sexuality or gender identity. I am both queer and transgender, meaning that I am the target of a lot of blanket queerphobia. Thankfully, I've had hardly any queerphobic bigotry directed at me personally, but I do feel and hear it in the atmosphere around me. At school, boys will say that transgender women are really just men with mutilated genitals. I hear boys mocking gay people by joking about being gay every single day. There is no way to describe the fear I feel when I hear these things. The last time I can truly remember feeling 100% safe was in an explicitly queer setting. Not to slander straight people, but because queer people feel inherently safer to me because of the community we share. I have had panic attacks at school over these issues, these comments, but I can guarantee you that being able to look out of the window and see a flag, a symbol of unity telling me that I am not alone, would help calm me down. The pride flag represents unity, community, and safety. And if you're pushing back against it, I would like to ask why. Thank you.
Okay, so board, by my count, we have 2 more official to go, and then I'll bring it back to see if you guys want to go anymore. But our last 2 by time limit are Amanda Montgomery and Lynn Walsley.
Past my time, I'm much too angry and going way better.
Lynn, would you like to speak? Okay, that'll open it up for Jeff Zapetti.
Hi.
Nice to see you, Lynn.
Yeah, it's been a while. Hi, everybody. Hi, my name is Lynn Wassley. I'm a Novato parent, grandparent, and ally, and I love this. Thank you so much. Thank you. I speak with you tonight in favor of the adoption of this resolution. Let's look at one reason why. The most recent California Healthy Kids survey showed that LGBTQI plus students continue to struggle in our schools, and in spite of advancements, those in grades 7, 9, and 11 continue to be at higher risk of bullying, chronic sadness, and thoughts of suicide. They also have poorer learning engagement and lower academic performance compared to their straight and non-transgender peers. Significantly, fewer than half of the I'm sorry. I have dyslexia, so what can I say, okay? I'm sorry. Half of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus students, that would be about 14%, by the way, in the study, indicated they felt safe in school. So fewer than half felt safe, and were twice as likely to experience bullying and harassment. The study also found that LGBTQ plus students if they experience more support, and the disparities in their mental health and academic performance would greatly diminish. More support, better outcome, right? The progress flag is a symbol of pride, a celebration of identity, but it is also a life-affirming recognition, a visual symbol of support for those who are too often marginalized. The flag also demonstrates that students will be treated with respect and that discrimination and harassment will not be tolerated. Some are using this as a political issue, but being safe and feeling acknowledged should not be political. By flying the flag, we foster a sense of belonging. We are saying, we see you, you are safe, you are welcome here, and more broadly, the flag honors our differences, whatever those differences may be. As I stand here before you, as I so often did 20 years ago while we were debating something rather too similar, I stand for so many, but perhaps most of all for my 18-year-old granddaughter, a recent graduate of Novato High School who is an open and proud lesbian, but who needs you to fly this flag. Trust me, she needs you to fly this flag, as countless others do. And as you consider this vote, I ask you to think about the positive message the NUSD sends to its students and community if you approve the resolution. But I also ask you to think about what the message is to kids if you don't. Thank you for your time.
All right, Jeff Sapelli, you are our last time speaker.
So I'll just keep it brief. We spent a lot of time today thinking about how we can keep our kids safe, right? We watched TV, we went online, we tried to figure out how we can keep our kids safe. And we heard today from all these kids about how they feel safe and ways that we can support them as adults and parents and teachers and board members to keep them safe. And so I just ask for you today to support that, support their flag, support their ability to feel safe and to feel more comfortable while they're going to school. Thank you.
So we are at the end of our allotted time. Should we bring it back to the board, or would you guys like to continue? I'm gonna just say, looks like we're gonna bring it back to the board and discuss the resolution. So, Trustee Jacobson, would you like to? Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee. So, if we have a speaker who didn't put in, you have to put in for a form. And you have to, and it's first come, first serve.
Yeah, no. Did you hear the beginning that we only do it for 20 minutes? And I'm sorry, I'm already here. Oh, no, that's okay. At the very beginning, he mentioned that there were only 20 minutes to do it.
Yeah, I thought you were going to extend.
We did a little, but we did already.
So you're going to go with this without any rebuttal.
Would you, I just want to, I mean, we can, if you have comments for the board, we can accept them by other means, but.
Well, then I'll go, you've had my email before, and I'll send them to you again. But this is what I have
Oh. All right. What?
This is a divisive flag. I don't feel safe.
So, hey, you guys. Knock it off. This is your government and work. This is a free country. We're trying to operate within the rules set forward, and we're trying to be patient with one another over this issue, okay? We had an individual that maybe didn't completely understand the process. We were trying to explain it. He had a little more to say to that, but unfortunately, we're going to bring it back to the board for discussion because it's your elected officials here who are going to make a decision about whether or not to adopt this resolution. So, board, Trustee Jacobson.
I'd like to move that we adopt this resolution as stated.
Tie for second. Trustee Jacobson has moved to adopt, and Trustee Butler has motioned to second. So I would ask the board if any trustees would like to comment or comment on how they're going to move on the resolution or ask questions of the rest of the board for discussion. So Greg, I recognize you.
Sorry.
Trustee Mack.
So I want to thank everybody for coming out. I wholeheartedly agree with the comments and the impact that this symbolism has on the health of students in our district. Completely support it. I would just also add that I see another dimension to this, and that is for the folks, the allies. We need more allies. There's a lot of young kids out there that are growing up without understanding this. And it's my take that the sooner and the earlier they understand kindness and empathy toward people who have a different birth situation, the better. So while I 100% support everything was just said, I think that's an added dimension that we also need to consider, that we need to do a better job of educating for empathy amongst the allies.
Okay, do we have any other comments from the board?
Yeah.
Trustee Aguilar.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we are looking into this. I'd like to thank the superintendent for bringing this forward and giving us an opportunity to talk about it and discuss. And glad to know that we are supportive of NUSD is already supportive of all groups. Back in March, how we supported the resolution. Our logo, in fact, I thought it was, colorful. So I thought that was wonderful how we're just, we're including everybody. And I wanted to ask you about, as far as the law goes, AB 200 and AB 201, does that obligate us to put up a flag?
We provided you legal advice
Right.
on that, and that's in your packet. Yes, it does allow us to put it on.
Does it obligate us to put up a flag?
We don't have an obligation, we have a desire.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to just share that as an immigrant, I totally share with what was said tonight. I'm being Mexican, bilingual, short, funny looking, now fat, whatever, just different than the rest. I came here when I was 10 years old. I've said this before. The board is tired of listening to me share the story. And I just want to say that I've shared these feelings with that you guys have shared with us tonight. And I appreciate you guys coming to share this. And because of that, because I know what it's like to be ignored and laughed at, and some of the things that you guys have experienced, I'm going to vote no in favor of this, because back to our resolution in March, we've included this population. And I'm afraid that if we pulled out, if we let any flag that's already included in that resolution, that it will not be representative of the greater Novato community. So I would like to not exclude anyone, to not pull anyone aside. I want us to all be included, because if we accept this tonight, we will have to accept other flags, and who knows what other flags may want to come towards us. Our community is diverse, and they need to be represented, and we need to honor them. We need to be equal and fair, and flags are not just a piece of cloth. They have symbolism, and to me, it symbolizes a lot. I mean, I honor the Mexican flag. I honor all our flags. And so I want to respect, and I just want to make sure that all our students are being respected. Flags to me are symbolism, like I said, but they're not necessarily the action. So I would like to focus more on the action. I want to make sure that our teachers in their classroom are teaching non-bias. I want to make sure that the teachers are making sure that all the students are being respected and not being bullied. And I want to make sure that the teachers make sure that none of the students in their classrooms feel like what they've all shared with us tonight. Because their feelings that they shared with us tonight, it's not okay. Because we all know, and you don't have to have a master's in psychology to know that you cannot learn if you're scared. So with that in mind, I respect the need for recognition, and I want to be supportive to the diversity of our community, all of Novato. And I want to make sure that our flags are being respected, that we don't get vandalisms or violence for the future. And teachers need to make sure that there's no bullying going on in the classrooms. That's how we can help. I want to make sure that we all do our part here to make sure that our students feel safe, and that they don't feel discriminated, and that they don't feel like there's bias going on in the classrooms, and that they are able to learn. So the way like I said, I want to respect this and be supportive of the diversity of our community, and I want to consider all of the broad spectrum, okay, of diversity that make up Novato, but I also want to do it in a very respectful and serene manner without any bias. So while I've been on your board, I've been on this board for 13 years, I've done my best to serve as your trustee, and I want to make sure that we honor and we be supportive of all, not just one group. I support this group, but I also support all the other groups, and I'm not going to repeat myself, but I hope that this issue will unite us rather than take us apart or pull us apart. And we can do this respectfully and in a peaceful manner by honoring all of us. And so let's continue to be supportive to all of our students. It is our obligation. So for that reason, I vote no.
Okay, well, hold on. So we haven't called the question yet, but we got that. So any other comments? I take it there aren't any. So I have maybe a little something to say on this issue. First of all, Trustee Aguila, thank you for your comments as a Republic democratically elected representative. You certainly are in your rights to speak and represent the people that see or feel similar. And I have heard many discussions and arguments on this particular issue, and it seems like a lot of the concerns are that it's much of a distraction to the board. Our focus ought to be more on education. And I'm not making any case. I'm just sort of explaining what's going on. Also, there's the expanding the capability. I mean, if we let one group fly a flag, then does that mean we got to let everybody fly a flag? And unfortunately, the answer to that is no, because in our constitutional government, you have a right to assemble and redress your government and ask them to do things. And that's what this group is doing, in my opinion. And if other groups want to go through the same level of activity and effort and come forward and ask this board to fly a flag that represents one thing or another, this board would or would not take that under consideration based on what the situation is. So essentially, these are some of the things that I'm hearing, you guys, as to why we shouldn't be addressing this issue, distraction, and if we open, it's a can of worms if we open it up. So I don't agree with that. I'm going to support the resolution, and I'm going to tell you why. When you live in a free country, and we all agree to abide by the Constitution and the rules and the laws that come forth of that Constitution, and the Constitution in the Ninth Amendment clearly states that if there's a group that have unenumerated rights, those are rights that aren't written literally in the Constitution, are being denied. They have the right to step forward, organize, and tell their government they'd like to be recognized and be treated fairly like everybody else. So from that perspective, and being a person in their, let's just say, 60s, there was a time when the level of bigotry and prejudice was commonplace. It was normal. And I want you to know that as a country, I think we've evolved a great deal due to the bravery of individuals, regardless of the issue or what it is being forwarded. I think that what the rest of us have to do is pay attention and understand if we want to live in a free country, we have to let other people be free in it as well. So as a group, for a long time, I think your rights have been, let's just say, heated and resented. And there have been efforts to marginalize, and, to treat you with less respect, and to limit your rights as an American. And so from my perspective on this issue here in Nevada regarding the resolution to fly a flag to represent your group, I think as an educator, it's important that we make a statement as an educational body that this is an issue in America today, and certainly right here in the community of Nevada, that needs to be addressed and acknowledged, and we need to pay more attention to it so that some of the suggestions we heard about respect for all and getting along, this is what we all need to do. We need to get together and understand that what's free for you is free for me. So I'm going to support the resolution because I think it's the right thing to do. Now, having said all that, this can be complicated, and as we go forward as an educational institute, we're an LEA, which we won't get into the acronym for that specifically, but we have to be careful when we're talking about sexuality and how we're going to work these things into society. But as an educational institution, we're going to take a stand. We're going to say this is what's out there, and we want our children to know about it. But having said that, we're going to have to work hard together, you guys, on ways to present this and to make sure that we go about it in a sensible, fair, and safe way. Because you only get one childhood, and it's our job to make sure that we do the best we can when we're educating children through their childhood, that they have the freest, fairest, and factual information as possible. So I'm not willy-nilly on the issue, I guess is what I'm saying, but I'm certainly in favor of it. So I'm prepared to call the question unless there's any more comment on the issue.
I just wanted to say that if the flag does go up, I want to just make sure that we have more security for the students and for the building, and just to make sure there's no vandalism from any group.
All right, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? We have 7-4. Those against? 6. Thanks for, I should have paid attention in math class. Okay, 6 in favor and against. Trustee Aguila against. So we have 6 in favor, 1 against. The resolution will pass. All right. Thank you. And we're going to move on to some real fun stuff now. I think it's facilities oriented, but we will, if you guys will be quiet if you're going to leave, keep your voices down. We would appreciate that because we have a few more things to do. All right, board. We have item D, which is approval of additional project funding and a resolution 32 approving the total base rent for TBR amount leaseback contract. So we're going to give it a minute to clear, and we will bring, and Lois Standing, our Chief Financial Officer, will present the report.
My heart's beating. I guess they were all here for one thing.
It's trustees, it's a shame we can't get this much interest over the next agenda item.
No, it's okay.
Really know
All
how
right.
to clear a room, Lois.
So, want to clear a room? Bring
I'm
up
used to it.
leaseback leases. Okay, so I'm ready for you to present.
So this has to do with the current this summer's project for Sinaloa. It, as you read on your cover page, it came in over budget, but not to any sort of alarming degree. It's never fun to come in over budget, but this one did for some of the same reasons that we've seen in the others, but it's within the reasonable margin. So what the staff is recommending is that, and I think it was pretty well written out in the cover sheet, is that we cover the difference with some savings from previous projects, part of it coming from the deferred maintenance allocation and the other coming from the IT allocation. And we can go into a little bit more detail if you want, but I didn't know if the cover sheet explained it well enough or if you had further questions.
Okay, Trustee Milrick, you were first, and then Trustee Gasson, unless Trustee Jacobson, did you have your hand up? No. Then Trustee Milrick.
Thank you. The fun part of any project where you got a limited amount of funding is at the end, where all of the things in early process you keep talking about what you're going to do, And late in the process, you're talking about what you can't afford to do. And we're getting down to the pain point project. And so we're going to take money out of the IT budget and move it over here. I support the move because I think your rationale makes perfect sense, and this is where we are. But we are going to be at a point where things are not going to get done that the community expected, and it's becoming clearer and clearer. So I will support this move. I think fixing the middle school is the right thing to do, including the fire system, which is safety critical, and the building enclosure, which preserves the buildings for long term. So I'll support it, but I expect more difficult conversations like this over the next.
On that topic, as I think I mentioned before, we'll be bringing sometime in the fall a complete conversation about how the rest of the money will, because things will need to be moved around a bit.
Yeah, that's budget talk for we're going to not do some of the stuff we thought we were going to do. Thank you.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
Exactly.
So similarly, I presume that whatever we're cutting out of the new clock, Bell doesn't seem, if it was the fire system or something more elaborate, so it seems pretty mild, but I just want to make sure we're not like taking a big chunk and not doing something with this 275,000.
You're talking about the IT piece?
Yeah.
I believe in the conversations I've had in the bond department, there is, for what we have planned right now, which is cameras, the rest of the infrastructure and the toolkits, it's more than enough.
Okay.
There's extra, we can start talking about what else we want to do for security. That the cameras have actually not been as expensive as we expected them to be.
Okay, good. It's not significant, and again, when you say new clock bell, I just don't want to come down the pike and go, well, we, didn't do something and not fully appreciate that maybe we missed something. So that was my only question, similar to what Trustee Miller was saying. I know we're going to be getting down to what we're left with, so I just wanted that clarity. So I'm totally fine with it all. Thank you for that.
And if the governor's proposal comes through, we'll have some more cushion with the reimbursements from the state.
Trustee Mack.
I'll move to approve and just add a comment that hearing what's coming in terms of one-times on the budget and the scale of that and the scale of this, I'm feeling pretty confident that we'll be able to do our projects. So that said, I want to move to approve this.
And I have a comment.
All right, so I have a first from Trustee Mack and a second from Trustee Milrick, and we are going to discuss it, and I have a comment as well. Trustee Milrick.
So 2 points. One is construction reimbursement. I'm thrilled that they're going to fund that, and that will give us some safety margin that we didn't have before. And that happened in the first bond measure. We had like a whole huge backlog of DSA unapproved projects because we didn't finish the paperwork, and we ended up with an extra $30 million as we finally cleaned up 20 years of paperwork. This will be some, but not of that magnitude. But the idea of using general fund money, which could go to compensation for construction projects, raises my hackles. I do not think that is an appropriate use of that money. So we'll have that conversation over time.
Okay, so we have the first, we have the second. I basically I support the recommendation. I think the justifications, I agree with how it's explained, et cetera. I'm always a little hesitant when we're taking away from IT infrastructure, only because in the public sector, I have to say personally that I'm convinced that much of the public sector is decades behind the private sector when it comes to taking advantage of technology and the efficiencies and advantages that it can give an organization from an organizational operational perspective. But in this particular case, it makes sense. I know there's been some talk about what to do with one-time funding, et cetera, and I think we could probably come to some kind of a common sense agreement on the proportional use of these funds. Trustee Milrick, we got to pay for everything, so. And IT would be a high priority. But what I thought I might, before I call the question on this, is when we're going to move the thing, but I'm asking the board if they might want to consider some direction for staff, that maybe it's about time, considering what happened with air conditioning, that we have the facilities department bring us back where we're at, full budget picture, what's left on the list, how much money, maybe some more information on chip availability, whatever else they can tell us. And I know I promised the superintendent we wouldn't put anything else on their plate until after graduation, so we're not going to do it before then. But would you guys be interested in getting some more detailed?
It's in the plans. It's in the works for probably September, early October.
I like September better.
Okay.
Okay, so that I'm seeing nods. No comments on my comment. Then I'll call a question so we can get out of here. All those in favor? 7 and 4, 0 against.
Thank you.
So we will approve that recommendation, and having done that, we are adjourned.